Welcome to The Future is Now, a Zoom communique from the future. My name is Cedar.
And I am Sequoia. And we are historians from the future, from the year that you would call 2688, in the place that you would call Humboldt County. But we just call it here and now.
That's right. We live in what you would call the future, but we've been studying the artifacts of the past, and what we are doing is we're attempting to find the folks who contributed to building the glorious utopia that we live in our present, in your future. And so we have
Oh, that's so reassuring.
Yes.
And we come with that message that keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, we are searching for the people who have been doing the good work in what you would call the year 2020, at this moment of conjuncture, where there's an opportunity to make changes in the way that things happen in our society, and that will eventually lead to the glorious utopia that you see before Sequoia and myself.
Oh, that's so reassuring. And in order to sustain ourselves back here in 2020, we sometimes use certain kinds of fuel that may or may not have been a durable delight for you. Are you guys still drinking tequila in whatever 668 years from now?
We don't call it tequila, but yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. Good.
That happens.
Is that okay, good. All right,
Yeah.
well, I'm fueled up and I'm ready for this conversation. This is so exciting to be able to reach out into the future.
And that's how we feel. And we're very, very fortunate that when we were doing our historical research and in our time, we don't do the technology the same way that you do. We have a lot more actual artifacts, physical artifacts that we touch. And we happened to stumble across a physical artifact that was a pamphlet about the land office, which was a project of an Imaginal Services Bureau where they really predicted many of the things that we have in our time. And so it really made us curious about who the people were who had started this work. And so we were, trying to figure out how to communicate back through the time, and somehow ended up on web pages. We met a man named Rufus on the futurology thread of Reddit, and he
Whatever that is.
to us, and here we are. And here we are.
So Rufus, Rufus is helping us with some text. Rufus, can you bring up the, I think they call it the web pages that we're going to be talking about tonight? There it is. I think we've got it. Oh yes, this is a listing from the Land Office, a project of the Cooperation Humboldt, an organization in your time. And tonight we have a member of one of the people doing the work in your time, 2020, to bring about the glorious utopia that we live in. And this page that we're viewing here is the Morituri Ranch West, which then deals with the issues of palliative care and hospice. And tonight we have a guest with us, the Dr. Michael Fratkin. Welcome to the year 2688.
I'm going to write that down to remember it. 2688. I would have just never thought.
I think that technically we are somewhere in limbo in the middle of our time and your time, if you really want to get technical. But if it makes you feel better, you can say that you're with us in our time.
Fair enough. Well, our meeting in the middle. It's okay with me.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I'm good. Welcome to the middle.
Thanks for having
me. I put on my hat for you because I don't know. It just felt like kind of a austere moment to show up for people who are trying to understand the nature of their own existence based on inquiry about the past. And that I'm just so relieved that you say it's somewhat utopian, that there's green things around you, Sequoia. Make me so happy. These are all the concerns that I had, and I'm so glad that it's still beautiful in Humboldt County, or whatever you call it, so many years ahead of us.
Yes, and just to reassure you, Dr. Fratkin, where I am is today, we're into the cat's play in the future.
It's called cosplay. It's cosplay. We're still learning a lot of the terminology of your time. Haven't quite got it.
But you can see behind me, I have a replica that we've built of the Star Trek Enterprise bridge, which I think was somewhat important to you all, because
I thought that's what your living room looked like.
but we can make it however we want. There's unlimited resources, and there's enough to go around for everybody.
That's amazing.
It's
Wow.
just we all just work together and make, what we do mostly is play.
Cool.
And through our day. I mean, we've solved energy problems. We've solved the problems of hate and divisiveness, and the world is just a great place to be. But one of the things that is still a challenge for a lot of people, and I think it was a challenge in your time too, and that's why we brought you on today, is to understand really the work you're doing in trying to make a change about how people approach dying as a part of life. I mean, we understand in our time period that death is just a natural part of life, and it's really a sacred moment, just like every single moment that we live. But what's the work you've been doing? We're trying to understand that this is even a problem.
The most important work that I am doing is that. That's my son, Max, who's probably the descendant of maybe even you guys. You never really know. But the work that I've been doing, the work that I've been called to do by my past, is to show up for the people in my community, in my world, when there's nothing we can do to fix them. And there's nothing we can do to change the outcome, but to show up still and know in my heart that by showing up with a few tricks, some knowledge, and a lot of respect, that I can make a difference for people, even as their life slips through their fingers. That was a whisper for so many years for me as I explored the world of doing physical medicine. But it became a more clear, strong voice over the last, say, 5 to 7 years as I built outside of our even more obsolete healthcare system. I built outside of that something that was kind of centered around the principles of love and respect, that people are not broken or need to be fixed, and that death is not some problem, but is actually sort of fundamental, central organizing principle of being a living, breathing, loving, playing human being.
And so, thank you so much, Doctor. We're having a lot of difficulty understanding what things were like 668 years ago, and one of those things is just understanding. You're talking about the healthcare system. Is that
healthcare system, right? If we think back 668 years ago, it turns out everybody grew up in a family with probably, lots of children, and every one of them would never be able to get out of their childhood without experiencing the death of one of their siblings, or the death of their aunt or their uncle or their mother or their father. People lived into their 40s, maybe 50s, and there was a few very elder, but the experience of being born and dying all happened at home for almost all of human history. We happen to live on the sort of end of the 20th century that was dominated with this idea that when people got sick, there was something wrong with them that needed to be fixed. And we developed all the sort of rudimentary technologies of science and medical science, and we fooled ourselves into thinking we could apply that to an industrial model of moving people through, identifying their problem, fixing their problem, identifying their problem, fixing their problem, transaction, transaction, transaction. And we called that the healthcare system. In truth, it's actually not a healthcare system. It was a disease care system, right? And what was lost was a sense of honoring and supporting and enhancing the native ability of human beings to experience well-being and greater health, either through activities that they do, by the way they eat, by the way they exercise, by the way they do all of that stuff, or that even human beings in the face of terrible, terrible medical problems and illnesses have the capacity to have enhanced wellness. That was unimaginable in a world where you thought the human thing was a mechanism or a machine. If it started to squeak, there's something wrong with it, something broken. If it stopped working, if it's a machine, it's a broken, useless machine as it loses its ability to function. But human beings, it's not the same. Biological entities, it's not the same. The idea that human beings somehow lose their value as they come to the completion of their life, just seemed like such a hurtful and painful problem that I stopped being interested in the mechanical aspects of providing healthcare or medicine to people. Like, to be trained as a doctor in the late 20th century was to be trained as if you were a high performance mechanic. And we used to drive around in these things called cars. I don't know if you remember or seen pictures.
Heard about them. They are they're cute. They're very cute and hilarious.
Why would you drag around like a giant piece of metal to get place? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, well, we were pretty obsessed with them. We invented them in the 20th century and we got just totally obsessed with them. But to use the analogy for those of your viewers that might have some cute, nostalgic interest, the analogy is that I was trained like a really high performance automobile mechanic. It's like I was really excited and interested in onboard computers and pistons and all of the things. And after a while, I became less and less interested in what was under the hood. They had a hood.
Yeah.
So we use this analogy of lifting the hood. So
like in the movie Herbie the Love Bug, which I watched for research purposes, that's where the it would lift up and it was like that's
in the back.
What happened? Yeah.
In the back. That's what and Herbie had its engine in the back. But yeah, you lift the hood, you get it. I was so fascinated at being able to fix and adjust and optimize and make the highest performances, like, working on these like really expensive automobiles. And I had all these tools and gizmos and things to assess it. But I lost interest until I had the insight to lower the hood and walk around to start addressing the driver inside the machine. And at that point, I had all of this medical information, all this understanding of how illness and disease can progress. But that was only the foundation of the platform I could stand on to start to understand, how do people drive these mechanisms? Who's inside of the body? What are their needs and experiences? Because we know that at some point, every old automobile, every old jalopy, after its pieces and parts have been changed and exchanged and replaced and improved and everything else, at some point, they all stop working. But the person, maybe not so much. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you know about the spirit and soul that lives inside of the machine.
The spirit and soul is still a mystery, Dr. Fratkin, and
oh, that's good too. I'm glad to hear that, actually.
And
we haven't figured everything out. We haven't. Really, what would the point be? I mean, exactly. that eternal mystery is I think very important for humans in the future too.
I do have some news for you though that might surprise you, and I'd like your feedback and thoughts about this. In our time, we have actually cured the majority of maladies that occur to the human body, and lifespan has been dramatically increased.
And also quality of that life has been increased.
Of course. And one can virtually extend their existence out for quite a long time, but this is the part that may surprise you, but probably won't surprise you, but might surprise some, is that even though some can live for hundreds of years, we don't do that. Most of us have the experience, and then then we live a little longer than you did, but we still all embrace that moment when it comes, because we have a balance in our life about this. Is there that balance in your time period? We're trying to understand how folks approach the death right now.
I think people are exploring the question. I don't know if you're aware, but there's every now and again in human civilization, infectious diseases have historically had a major impact on human society. And right now, in 2020, we're in the midst of an incredible challenge, something called coronavirus, COVID-19. You may have heard of COVID 336 by the time you guys are looking at it, but COVID-19 was the first time a coronavirus had spectacular, deep, and incredible impact on human society all the way around and across the planet. Everybody has been affected. And we've seen some extraordinary phenomena. One was within the period of a couple of weeks, everybody stopped going out. Everybody stopped going to work, except for what we call essential services. That everybody stopped breathing on each other and started wearing masks to prevent any potential for spread of this virus from one person to the other.
This explains some photos I've seen. I thought that was just the fashion of the time, but that explains some photos. Yeah.
I think we're going to discover that it actually becomes quite an important fashion element over the course of the next few years, because this virus is not going to go away so quickly, or at least all the uncertainty regarding this virus is not going to go away so quickly. But certain phenomena are undeniable. One is, I don't know if you remember in your historical assessment, not too many years ago, maybe 40 or so years ago, the first rocket ships off the planet floated up into the sky, and then they turned around and regarded the planet in its truth, which is that it's a big, beautiful, round, blue-green thing hanging against the inky black backdrop of what appears to be almost endless space. And that was the first time everybody had a chance to look at ourselves in proper context. That was a moment for human beings, right? This is a similar moment, but it's a little bit more abstract. It's the first time I think that human beings anywhere on the planet felt vulnerable with everybody on the planet at the same time. As similar, they use the term noetic for the experience of the oh my godness of seeing the planet against space. There's an oh my godness, somewhat more abstract, about a virus that doesn't care what color you are, where you live, what planet you are, but it just moves with just insane capacity around the global population, which is currently at 7.5 billion people. So one of the things that 7.5 billion people or so are experiencing all at once is their mortality. The threat to their sense of security, their threat to the illusion that, no matter how long we live, 70 years, 170 years, human beings love to believe they're going to live forever. And they function as if and from the illusion that they'll live forever. And in doing so, they have the capacity to validate and justify a lot of antisocial, anti-environmental, anti-reality based thinking that has had a lot of impact that you can tell me about how we've solved. But human beings in this moment have discovered that they really are part of a global human community. And that's kind of like seeing the planet against the inky black backdrop of space. And so everybody is worried, am I going to get it? somebody I love going to get it? In fact, in truth, almost everybody will experience the death of somebody close to them. I've experienced the illnesses of 3 people in my world, my networks of people who've gone through coronavirus related infections, and they suffered even though they didn't end up hospitalized or dead. I live in a network of professionals that take care of sick people, and they are going through it in the population centers where very sick people and very dead people are piling up. So I'm very impacted, and most everybody is going to be impacted as this pandemic, we call it, evolves. That awareness and presence of mortality is very interesting. Like my work, I've been working somewhat in obscurity, in tending to and showing up for people where most of the world wants to kind of avert their gaze at the mortality of others. But in this experience where everybody feels a little bit of threat for their own mortality, people understand a little bit better about what I do than they did a few weeks ago, which is super interesting. I don't know if that part will be durable. If people's bringing mortality into the sort of orienting compass that they use to live their life. Right now, everybody's very present to it. I hope that even as the threat of coronavirus and the pandemic ebbs and starts to retreat, I hope that they hold on to the very valuable orientation, that knowing that life has a beginning and a middle and an end.
There's a very specific reason that we're calling into your time. And it's because this is a moment when there is great change that is occurring. And the other guests that we have on are in different fields and different areas, but they're all doing the work to bring about a better world. And that's why we're here, because we want to tell you, to reassure you about the work that you're doing, and also to maybe help others to get that message as well.
It
And
feels
goal,
valuable.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Our goal when traveling through time, like this is we're doing a history report, not a future report. We're coming to learn about you. And I think that there are also grave dangers in revealing too much about what the future looks like, because that can, in fact, alter what the future becomes. Exactly. But many people are reporting, who we are speaking to, that in this moment, because of the great changes that are going on, there is an awakening happening in many people that if you continue doing the work, can be the spark that does become the great utopia.
Well, I hope that's true. I mean, there's part of me that just wants to ask you a million questions, but I don't want to screw up the whole time-space continuum thing. Now, so
Yeah.
I'm here to answer your questions rather than pummel you for insights that might actually change the whole time frame. Have you ever watched Flash? There was a show called Flash. They do a lot of time bending and things. Never mind.
I would be very interested to watch that, to see how that, if they were as prophetic as some of the people we've seen from this time in predicting the future. Maybe they had it right on. So,
oh no, they screwed it up. They made mistakes. They screwed up the future. They changed everything. Ray Bradbury wrote about it. All of our great science fiction people, like Steven Spielberg, Back to the Future. Oh, we always screw it up, and we know too much about the future. So I'll let you guys figure out what you need to from the past, but I'm going to leave the future to unfold as it's meant to.
Smart man.
Yeah, you know. I watched
You've seen enough movies. That's
right.
That's the way we've been able to access a lot of these things in our research. Most people these days actually spend their time outdoors and enjoying the world actually as it is. But we're kind of oddballs in that way. We're interested in these people staring at screens, such as the Star Trek people. It was the show about people watching TV, basically.
Basically. Hey, do you guys still have popcorn?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Oh, good.
It's kind of the
Thank God.
foundation of our society,
Sorry,
actually.
I'm sorry I asked.
I mean, that's fine.
That's the phrase they use, right? That's the phrase that you are you kidding me, right? That's the way they say it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're good at this. You're good at
We've
this.
researched the idioms and the ways you all speak. We're trying to really
Blend in.
Yeah,
blend
nicely
in.
done. You're doing
Blend.
okay.
Excellent. We wanted to ask you, well, first, Doctor, I keep referring to you as Doctor, and one thing I want to let you
You can
know is
call me
that
Michael.
in the future, well, that's fine. Yes, very good. In the future, most people are a little more well-rounded, and in a I think in our time you could call anybody doctor because we have universal education. Everyone pursues their pursuit, their passions, and their for life, and they all gain that kind of insight, whether it's about bread baking or making music. We're all doctors.
Right. For sure.
But for you, sir, this is your specific field we wanted to talk about. What is the ideal future? How would you like how would you like things to be different than they are now? I understand your vision of your understanding of that, and you've explained to us this healthcare system that is odd for us. I don't know if how would you explain that and describe that future for us so we can understand what it is that you're working for?
Well, I mean, don't confirm or deny that this is how it plays out. But my vision is that we are less at the service of what we refer to as our egos. That we're less in the activity and obsession related to the creation of wealth or status for ourselves, but we're more aligned with each other in the elevation of purpose. And we're less about building stuff and more about building self and more about building other selves than we are about this particular self.
Hmm.
We obsess with being cool. We obsess with being safe. We obsess with being in possession of this and that object or symbol of power, of value, of brilliance, of originality. And we're less in the business of crafting the most complete and whole selves that we can be as beings. And because of that, we're less attendant to the needs of the people around us who require more support or healing for experiences that have contributed to less ability, less privilege. There's a guy I love, this Dr. I think Albert Abraham Maslow. He created this model. He's a psychologist, meaning he was a student of the human mind and the human behavior and the development of the self. And he created this model where it's a really simple idea. It's like when you don't have food, you don't have shelter, you don't have clothing, you're unsafe. Those are the things that dominate your experience. But if you've got those things handled, then you can advance towards attention to and importance and meaning related to relationships and social functioning and the creation of new and different ideas and enterprises and organizations that you can get involved once you've got your food, shelter, clothing, and basic sense of self security handled. But then if you do that, if you live long enough, if you achieve a certain amount of engagement with society and with the people around you, you actually can go even further to the kind of inner work of understanding the nature of yourself and the nature of your place in the universe and the nature of society. But in order to really go that high, you find yourself attending to the folks that can barely even look up and see the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. So I've been working on my own inner understanding of the nature of myself, knowing that my life will kind of poof into existence and will poof out of existence. And in the meantime, I've been able, through privilege and good fortune, to gather enough resources to where I'm wearing clothes. I have food, or at least I'm wearing my shirt. You don't know what I'm wearing or not below, but I've got food, I've got a
You have a
home,
hat on too.
and I've got a hat.
Yeah.
I'm good. So I can start to ascend towards deeper questions like you're asking me about the nature of myself. And yet I'm drawn to the ones that don't have food, don't have shelter, don't have safety, or managing the burden of wounds that they've accumulated through the circumstances and random courses of their lives. So in order for me to go any higher, my attention has to be towards raising the bar. So as I imagine a future that works, Maslow's hierarchy becomes a pancake, and we're all caring for each other organically while supporting each of us to advance human consciousness, to advance our understanding of ourselves collectively. And I think actually that's where the technology, well, you don't confirm or deny this, but I think that's where the technology of 668 years kind of emerges. It emerges from not what we can do with gizmos and pens and paper and materials, iron ore and heat and energy. The real technological advancement that's ahead of us, I hope, is a function of collective human consciousness exploring the real mysteries of time, space, and the magic of human existence.
Let's not tell them how things work out.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Can I just say that we do have our needs met. And so through the hard work of everyone leading up to this, we have figured out a way to make sure that everyone's needs are met.
Now that doesn't mean, I'm gonna have to ask you this. That doesn't mean that you're not sad.
No.
Or you don't hurt, or you don't have losses and grief, right?
But
That's actually a piece of it, isn't it?
It is, very much.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to feel that, and to go through the philosophical inquiry, and to dig deep down and experience those things and explore them is, that's kind of part of why we're here.
It's not like all good. I mean, Utopia has this kind of concept that maybe everything's all just, marshmallows and rainbows and unicorns and stuff. You know what unicorns are?
Shh, we can't tell you that.
Don't talk to her about him about the unicorns, okay?
I love unicorns. But yeah, no, I wouldn't expect a world that was whole and complete and enriched and in some way unified to be free of pain and sadness and suffering and wounds and mistakes and mess. But it's beautiful mess. That's what I discover leaning into people as they finish their lives. Boy, do they ever reconcile and confront all of the mess of their lives. And it's not always pretty, and it's not always easy. But there's something quite beautiful about people doing that good, hard work at the end of their lives. There's something awe-inspiring. There's something awe-inspiring about an addict that finishes their life clean and sober, really having no good reason to do that, or the life that they lived and the story that they have in their own history. There's something so beautiful about that. And it may be messy, and it may be happening at the rescue mission or under a bridge, And we may have to run around in circles trying to get their needs met and get them some clean socks and a sleeping bag and a tent. But there's something so beautiful about people that make that progress in the last part of their life because they've never quite had the support or the motivation or the oomph to heal that stuff. So beautiful.
It's been so beautiful talking with you, Dr. Michael Fratkin. We appreciate you, and we may have you on in the future. We'll see.
We'll see
We'll see where we get.
No, I will tell you something. This is an observation I want you to have sort of in your mind. You know, I looked it up once, and it turns out there's been like about 108 billion humans to date, coming up to 220, but 108 billion human beings. And there's about 7.5 billion of us walking around. But of the 101 billion of people who've died after walking, crawling, or running their way through whatever amount of time they had in front of them, I have a sad observation that in 2020, it's never been harder to complete a life for a human being than it has been in all of human history. So my great hope for the future is that we learn how to reconcile and live into our deaths in a way such that we provide all the resources and support and necessary caring that's required for human beings to let loose of their lives at the right time. It's never been harder in all of human history than it is today, as a result of all the technology that we've created. We've lost touch with the human container that's necessary for less suffering at the end of life. And I'm trusting that you and your green utopia have got that kind of sorted out a little bit better than we do in 2020.
Thanks to the work you started. Yes, we do.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We hope to meet you sometime in the middle again.
Yeah, and I'll be looking for the middle. I'm always looking for the middle. I'll be striving to reach forward to find you guys. Thank you so much for reaching back to find me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Rufus will be in touch with you to give you more information.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank God for Rufus.
Thank God for Rufus.